Buckle up, everybody, because today we're diving deep into the global auto industry. It's a wild ride out there, folks. And we're going to look at how a proposed 25% tariff on cars from Europe from former U.S. President Donald Trump could really shake things up, especially for two major players, Hyundai and Kia.
Yeah, it's a fascinating situation. It's more than just a trade spat. This has the potential to completely rewrite, where cars are built. Where they're sold, especially as EVs become more and more popular.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so interesting to me. We know these tariffs could make things tougher for brands like BMW or Mercedes,
Right.
but it might actually open up some real opportunities for Hyundai and Kia.
Right.
So let's break it down. Why could this actually be good for them?
Okay, so let's start with the tariff itself. We're talking about a jump from 2.5% to 25% on cars coming from the EU into the U.S. I mean, imagine a BMW. That costs $50,000, suddenly has a $62,500 price tag.
Whoa, yeah, that's a huge difference. That's going to hurt.
Okay.
So that's bad news for European automakers. But it sounds like American companies and Japanese giants like Toyota and Honda, they're probably pretty happy about this, right?
Yeah, they're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Because they already build a lot of their cars right here in the U.S.
Right.
But Hyundai and Kia are in this really interesting position because they do have factories here in the U.S., but they also make a lot of cars in Europe. Some of those models are sold here in the U.S.
Okay.
And this tariff kind of throws a wrench into that whole strategy.
Yeah, they're caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
So what options do they have? I've heard expanding U.S. production is on the table.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong possibility. Hyundai's got their plant in Georgia.
Yeah.
Kia's down in Alabama.
Yeah.
And both of those factories are already getting ready to build more electric vehicles.
Yeah.
More EVs.
Right.
So instead of shipping, the IO and IQ5 or the EV6 from Europe, they could just make more of them right here.
Okay, so shift production to the U.S. to get around that tariff. What's the advantage besides just not paying the import tax?
Well, I think it's more than that. It really ties them closer to what could be the biggest EV market in the world. And it gives them more control over their supply chain. And it might even, save them money on labor costs down the line.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I've also heard that they could actually double down in Europe. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, as European car makers are, trying to figure out how to export to the U.S., the competition within Europe is going to get a lot more intense.
Yeah.
And that's where Hyundai and Kia could step in and, grab a bigger piece of the pie, especially when it comes to electric vehicles.
So they could use this challenge to actually become dominant in Europe.
Exactly. And the timing is perfect.
Yeah.
Because Europe is really all in on EVs.
Yeah.
Their policies are making it easier and easier to buy and own electric cars.
Right.
So Hyundai and Kia are already doing well there, but this could be their chance to become major players.
It's like a judo move. You're using your opponent's force against them. But what if these tariffs expand? What if they start hitting Japan and South Korea directly?
Well, that's the threat, isn't it? That's the big question mark. During his first term, Trump really pushed for more manufacturing here in the U.S.
Yeah.
He even considered, trade retaliation against South Korea.
Right.
So Hyundai and Kia need to be ready if that happens again.
So how do they prepare for that? What's their next move?
Well, they could, really boost their production here in the U.S., go beyond just shifting stuff from Europe, maybe expanding those factories or even building new ones. That would send a pretty clear signal that they're serious about the American market.
Yeah, like a big, bold statement. Invest even more in the U.S. What else could they do?
Well, diversification is really important. So they could think about setting up production in other places, like Mexico or Southeast Asia, spreading out their manufacturing.
Yeah.
That gives them more flexibility if one market gets unpredictable.
So don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's about hedging their bets.
Exactly. Having options is really important these days because things can change so quickly. And, another thing they could do, they could work more closely with the U.S. government, especially on policies that are, promoting EVs, green energy, all of that.
Oh, interesting. So aligning themselves with the government's priorities, that could give them an advantage.
Yeah, think of it as a strategic partnership. If Hyundai and Kia are seen as, key players in America's green future, that could really help them down the line.
Okay, so we've talked about how this tariff could really shake things up for Hyundai and Kia, the different paths they could take. But let's zoom out for a second. What does this all mean for the average car buyer?
Right. That's the big question, isn't it? I mean, it looks like this corporate chess game, but it has real consequences for everyone.
Yeah. Can you give us an example?
Sure. Let's say Hyundai and Kia decide to go all in on U.S. production. That probably means more jobs here in America, which is great. But it could also mean higher prices because companies are going to pass those costs on to the consumer.
So there's a potential trade-off there. What if they focus on, winning in Europe? What does that look like for us?
Well, more competition in Europe,
Yeah.
especially in the EV market, could actually lead to, more innovation. And that could bring prices down for everyone worldwide.
Oh, wow.
So if that happens, it's good for everybody.
Okay, so it's complicated. Depending on what Hyundai and Kia do, there could be different winners and losers. And we don't really know how it's going to affect car buyers just yet.
Right. That's how global trade works.
Yeah.
It's intricate. It's always changing. It's really tough to predict the future. But one thing's for sure, the auto industry is in the middle of a revolution. And these trade tensions just add another layer of complexity.
Okay, so let's recap what we've learned. We've seen how this proposed tariff on European cars has put Hyundai and Kia in a tough spot. They've got some big decisions to make. We've talked about their options. Doubling down on U.S. production, expanding into new markets, even working more closely with the U.S. government. We've analyzed all of this, from the company's perspective. But what about you, the listener?
Yeah, think about this shift to electric vehicles and all the potential impacts of these trade wars. What do you think would be the best path for Hyundai and Kia in the long run?
It's a tough question. No easy answers, but it's something to think about.
The auto industry is changing right before our eyes, and the decisions these companies make are going to have a huge impact on their success.
And on the global car market as a whole.
Exactly. It could affect everything, from how much cars cost, to what models are available, to how quickly EVs become mainstream.
It's a story that's still unfolding. We'll be watching closely.
And as always, we encourage you to do the same. Stay curious, stay informed, and keep those wheels turning.
That's it for this deep dive, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.
Yeah, it really is a fascinating time for the industry. We've got this tension between, protectionist policies like tariffs and the push for global cooperation, especially when it comes to things like climate change and the shift to electric vehicles.
Yeah, it's a tough balance. It's like you said, a real tug of war between looking inward and thinking globally. And companies like Hyundai and Kia, they're right in the middle of it.
Makes you wonder if this whole tariff thing could actually backfire. Like, could it slow down the progress we're making on EVs?
I think it's definitely a risk. If companies are forced to focus on just regional production to avoid tariffs, it could really hurt the kind of collaboration and knowledge sharing that's so important for innovation.
Right. So instead of this global race to build the best EVs, we end up with a bunch of separate markets, which might not be good for anyone in the long run.
Exactly. A truly global EV market where everyone's sharing ideas and competing on a level playing field. That's how we're going to see the fastest advancements in things like battery technology, charging infrastructure, and ultimately more affordable and efficient electric vehicles for everyone.
So this trade war, it could actually be a roadblock to a greener future.
It has the potential to be, yeah. It's a good reminder that even when we're trying to do the right thing, sometimes our actions can have unintended consequences.
Yeah, that's a good point. It seems like Hyundai and Kia, and really any company operating in this globalized world, they're going to need to be really smart and adaptable to deal with all of this.
Absolutely. They've got to balance those short-term considerations like avoiding tariffs with their long-term goals like innovation and sustainability and, becoming global leaders. It's a tough balancing act.
Well, folks, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We've explored the potential impact of these proposed tariffs, the different options Hyundai and Kia have, and even talked about the bigger picture for the auto industry and our efforts to build a greener future.
We hope you've learned something new today and that you have a better understanding of the complex forces that are shaping this industry and the tough choices these companies are facing.
And remember, the story's not over. Keep an eye on how this all develops.
As always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the things that matter to you.
Until next time, everybody.